Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today is Wednesday, Dale Keown Day, and that is why we are looking at DragonRing issue number 13. Last episode was issue 12. These are the only two consecutive issues of DragonRing that I own. Published by Aircel, a Canadian independent comic book publisher based in Ottawa, Ontario, who were active in the 80s mostly. Things to look out for in the Dale Keown artwork that we're going to be looking at today. The John Byrne influence that I've talked about before, right? So we'll see more examples of that. The fact that Dale Keown is a fully formed artist at this point. And there are even things in here that I'll point out that I think are, if I can call them pit-isms, that sounds like a really funny word, but basically things in his art style that he's doing here in 1987 that we would definitely see more of once he hit Image Comics and did Pit in the early 90s. If I'm not mistaken, that was 92 or 93, so that's still, 5 years off, 6 years off from what we're looking at here. But again, I make the argument that I think at this point, Dale Keown is a professional. He's around 25 years old working on this, and he's fully formed. There's this weird thing that happens when he gets to Marvel and starts on the Incredible Hulk, where his style just kind of becomes more house style because mostly of the inkers. And I'll cover that when we get to those issues. So just point out some of those differences that I see in this comic, just like the one from last episode. So let's crack her open, have a look inside. So once again here, for some reason, the credits have changed a little bit. So I don't know if there's some sort of infighting at Aircel Comics, but created by Barry Blair originally, excuse me, that's what it said last issue. And now all of a sudden we have Guang Yap as well, as who's co-credited as creator. So I don't know what's going on there specifically. Story layouts, once again, last issue he was credited as like writer story. Barry Blair, once again. Now he's credited with layouts. Okay, so I wasn't aware of that. Surprising, because I do think Dale Keown on his own is more than capable of, some great layouts, some amazing layouts. Again, illustrated by Dale Keown, so I'm going to assume he's inking, which makes sense when you look at the quality of the line work in this issue, and that Dale Keown kind of hatching style that is easily recognizable. And I'm going to assume that he does the colors as well, because there's no other credit for a colorist. So it's, and I was reading kind of the indicia down here. Was it here? Yeah. So DragonRing is published monthly by Aircel Publishing. So, I mean, Dale Keown, if he was drawing, ink, like penciling, inking, and coloring this all within a month, I mean, good on him, man. That's like a pretty elaborate style to be meeting monthly deadlines, and especially having to color it as well. So he must have been working some long hours on this comic. It does look good. Like I do think it's already almost fully, or pretty much fully formed Dale Keown. And you can see examples of that here, this hatching here and stuff, that we would see a lot more of in Pit, more exaggerated obviously, but I mean the beginning is here. Not that this is subdued in any way. I think it's starting to move towards that image style that everyone loves, and that hatching style, right? But Dale Keown always made it work. I mean, I think he always had a strong illustrative base, so he wasn't just hatching kind of random nonsensical things. Here he's using the hatching to great effect to give us that sense that this, is a leather jacket. I'm assuming is the look he's going for in the texture. I think it works. So notice in the faces, you'll notice some Byrne stuff, right? That's where I see a lot of John Byrne still, and we'll see more of this werewolf a little bit later that we saw last episode. Let me point out this panel. Like, the helicopters are great, no problem with that. Not that I have a problem with the panel, but look how minimalist this background is, just, I think it's hilarious. That took all of like 5 seconds, but I mean, it works, so I can't, I do think that Dale Keown overall, other than these maybe backgrounds where he's more interested in the actual textures and stuff, like we saw last episode as well, he's kind of, going very minimalist to move ahead. Again, I was talking about the deadline. Maybe that's where he's making up time, right? Which, good for him, because I mean the artwork is amazing, and if you can find shortcuts that still make the comic visually interesting, go for it, especially on the working side of things. I do want to point out this weird kind of airbrushy early Photoshop background, because I do think possibly Aircel were playing around with early computer graphics and things, and I'll point out more examples in this issue of why I think that and where those examples are. But I could be wrong. Could just be some sort of weird airbrushing, layering, or something like that. That's a little more analog style. But I definitely think with the other examples, it gives credence to the fact that some sort of digital manipulation may have been used in this comic. So again, I'll talk about the economy of, this feels like it's, let me finish my sentence, the economy of background and how well it works. And also, I think this is some sort of definitely a reference picture that he took and just did a silhouette, which is great. I mean, it's integrated into the art really well. I even feel this might be a reference. Like this whole background is from a picture, I feel. And maybe he threw this in the foreground, right, to give us again those different planes. This is a classic shot right between the legs. That's a good tool to just have something interesting in the foreground. Gives more depth to the image. These characters are still pretty well framed, you know. It's that almost panel within a panel idea, right, that sometimes happens in comics. It's pretty common. It works. The frame within a frame, right? As I said, I could find tons of examples. Here's another one. Frame within a frame, right? It just helps, again, it says it, to frame things. Yeah, all this, again, like this feels very John Byrne to me, this here, right? But this maybe feels more Dale Keown. This here feels Dale Keown, and I could like maybe with a little bit more detail and stuff, but this is almost like what he's doing in Pit. That's an example of that. Here's an example of this profile here. I think is very, you know, something, the type of hatching we're seeing on the hand here and on the face is something he would do a lot of on Pit, right? And this is like this, you could almost take this panel, slide it in, you know, throw in some 90s computer coloring and throw that into Pit. That would totally work. And this, I think, again, gives a bit of credence to the argument I had last episode once again, that I think Dale Keown has seen Rock and Rule. And if you don't know what that is, go check it out on YouTube. It's a great animated cartoon from the early 80s that was produced in Canada and just didn't have a wide theatrical release or wasn't very popular originally when it came out. Became kind of a cult movie. I think, again, I might have mentioned this last episode, but if you lived in Canada back in the 80s, you probably had a better chance of watching Rock and Rule because of its Canadian production. I feel like that's why I saw it a lot on TV, at least when I was younger in the 80s. And this just harkens back to that somehow. Again, I could be wrong, but I just feel like that whole Rock and Rule vibe is there with the kind of, from what I remember from the animated movie, the kind of villain at the end of the movie, you know, maybe resembles this a bit, and the fact that he's appearing on these kind of mirror screens and stuff. I could be wrong. Over here, more examples of what I think of. I was talking about the computer coloring. So maybe for the background and stuff, or maybe that's airbrush again, but there's like, when you see it up close, there's like this slight kind of computer screen texture, and again, that's what kind of, maybe it was printed out and pasted on, because it still looks pasted on. When you look at the corners here, they're a bit off, right? You've ruled your panel, and then you stick the image on top, and maybe you cut off a bit of the line here and stuff, which isn't the end of the world on the production level. But again, also using just an actual picture of a city here to create that background, where I do think, you know, a bit of light boxing and the actual Dale Keown line work on top would have helped to make it obviously more evocative and more in tune with the rest of the style of the artwork. You know, when you go from kind of this to this, it's a little bit jarring, right? This is very cartoony here. Not that it's a bad, you know, it's a good storytelling tool. We move into the story, no problem, but there's a disconnect here for sure. Another example here, and I don't think it works very well here. Not that it works that great here, but another thing here is the darkness of all the colors and stuff, and this weird kind of, you know, I get it with what the dialogue is saying, and there's a storm coming, but maybe the storm's a little too dark here for actual readability and clarity. Some interesting kind of colors in the background here, right? Stuff you wouldn't see much by the time the 90s rolled around. Like I said, there's a real 80s vibe to this book, obviously. And again, even in the coloring, if Dale Keown's doing it, I feel like it resembles that animated kind of rock and roll style. Great Rain. Not quite sure what he's doing there. I would have to assume that because of the way this is being colored, it's probably in the colors. And I will mention that I feel that with the printing, the black does get faded a little bit, but it works in the favor of the artwork. And again, the way it's colored, it's almost like it blends together better. Almost looks kind of painted, I guess. This, I'm not quite sure what's going on here with these characters. They're from Monkey Island, so I don't know what they're trying to say there. This, like, genitalia representation. I know these are young men and whatever, but they're not wearing much, and you know, you would think you would at least give a hint of something. These seem genderless right here in a weird kind of way. So, talking about the minimalist backgrounds again, right? Very impressionistic, not a lot of lines, a lot of work done in the color. And that's pretty much all throughout the comic. But again, the character work is so good, right? And then we're getting lots of classic Keown looks and faces here. Again, you see that Byrne influence in this guy a lot for some reason. Not the best running shot. It's all right. It's like the upper body is very dynamic, but maybe the lower one could have been a little bit more. But I mean, it works. Not saying it doesn't work. Here we get kind of a horror comics vibe, EC vibe, right? And then I'll turn the page with just this weird kind of dominatrix scene, right? Stepping on them and stuff. They didn't go too far, but I mean, that seems to be what's going on here. Some domineering. She's certainly dressed for it. Shaky feet. Dale Keown always finds interesting ways to work out textures. The water reflection, that's not something that's easy to do. He does really well here. Going back to textures, right? The stones and the ground and stuff. Very nice. All his rock textures, stones and stuff. Good stuff there too. So we get another glance at the werewolf. And I think that's it for this issue. Some weird stuff going on here. This, I don't know at this time if what McFarlane's doing, if people know about him, but this seems like a McFarlane kind of thing to do here. Right from the black into the fading hatching into like a contrasting light color. Just very odd. I'm not saying it's horrible, but I mean, maybe just, you know, keep the shadow going here underneath. Maybe keep that at the top there, but all this be kind of blacked out. Maybe that would work better. I could be wrong. I guess what he was trying to do is pull this out from all the black that surrounds it. And that's it for Dale Keown in this one. I will go through real quick this Jake Thrash, the man behind the shadows, just to prove a point about some of the color work that sometimes gets a little bit confusing in these 80s books, right? I think that's kind of a common thread amongst independent 80s books. A lot of them had trouble handling the color, right? There were issues with trying, you know, newer, better techniques on newsprint and stuff, and it didn't always work. So I feel like this is an example of that. I'll read the description and then we'll have a look at it. The following 6 pages are a sneak preview of Jake Thrash, a new 3-part miniseries by the multi-talented David Cooper, coming soon from Aircel. I know that name, David Cooper. I'm just, you know, I'm drawing a blank right now as to what else. Maybe he continued on and did some work. So I don't know if you can see, there's this weird kind of effect. It's either, I think it has to be an effect that was added on, right? But somehow from where it was done on the artwork and the translation into published kind of on newsprint and stuff, something doesn't work here and really obscures the art, because the art's kind of interesting and fun and funky. But these kind of, I don't know if they're wind effects or what they were going for here, but it just doesn't work and really obscures the art. So something that looks actually pretty cool doesn't seem very cool because it's hard to look at. It's not fun to look at. Here he's kind of used that same effect, I guess, from the light source here. And it just made, I mean, in a single panel like this, it could work without it everywhere else, but it's all over the place. Wherever there's light, there's like, and there's just this general wind. I'll call it a wind. I don't even know if that was the goal here, right? But all it does is obscure most of the art. And the art looks fun and interesting, right? But this whole windy effect is just making me not like it. If you took all that out, I'm pretty sure I would like the strip 100% more. Just hard to see the art. And ultimately, when you're reading a comic, I do think, you know, you do want to have a good look at the art, not an obscured one like we're getting here. And there you have it. So today's book was DragonRing, number 13 by Aircell, artist Dale Keown. Hope you enjoyed the episode and you'll stick around, like and subscribe. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope everyone out there has a great day.
Like! Subscribe! Like! Subscribe!
King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13. 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at kingcomics.ca, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.